Hi everyone. I'm grateful to Rush Sports and Shamas to provide us the opportunity to address this particular issue, how grassroots and governance go hand in hand so far law, policy and structure is concerned. With us, we have one of the most promising emerging sports lawyer of this country. Please let me introduce Tony Phillip. Tony is an in-house counsel with one of the most sought after franchisee with the Indian Premier League. Tony works with RCB, Royal Challengers Bengaluru. And welcome, Tony. Then we have with us Ishwar. Ishwar had the opportunity to work with one of the most premium sports law firm in the country that goes by the name of NK Law Associates. Ishwar perhaps has the most diverse experience in working across the spectrums of sports law practice, including the Grassroots Foundation. If I'm not mistaken, Ishwar, hi. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this. You had the opportunity to work with Go Sports Foundation as well? Yes. Thank you, Ishwar, and welcome. And we have Shravan with us. Shravan, as he confesses to me behind the scenes, that fortunately, unfortunately, his practice now revolves around sporting entities within the industry. And we all here agree on one part that sports law, as we say, is not a domain specific practice or a subject specific practice. It is inherently an industry specific practice where, even after decades of experience, we cannot comprehend what kind of matter or what nature of entities we might have to deal tomorrow when we wake up. So, welcome abroad, everyone.
Thank you.
I'll just start by introducing how each one's journey started to take shape as a sports lawyer. Tony, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
Sure.
Sure. So, 5 years in National Law School, Kochi,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And after that, a stint with Infosys.
Not directly after. So I started my career in 2013 with Wipro.
All right.
Yeah. So I spent a little more than a year there. I guess I took a year break. Then I had stints with pretty much all IT companies, Cognizant, Infosys, with banks squeezed in the middle, randomly in between. And then I worked with a US-based company called Turing, who is again into IT-based services and AI-related services. And RCB has been new. I wouldn't call it accidental, but yeah, I never saw this coming. I was just a kid infatuated with sports, but I've had no prior experience for working with sports management or sports law before. And but I yeah, I always kind of imagine how nice it would be to get to work with sports, and this just worked out. And I'm very new to the field of sports and sports law, however you want to define it. I just completed a year and 4 months here at RCB, but yeah, that's the story so far.
So one thing that is I find most common amongst all the sports lawyer, somewhere amongst us is still the person who has not succeeded as an athlete in his career and still has the dream and perhaps perpetually ready. When we see our teams go and play or an athlete we vouch for or say behind our head, we are always somebody who's like, I should always be ready to sub the player if the player is not
Yes.
playing well in my team. And we all have opinions which we have as our what you say it like unfinished dream, which we somehow try to address and cope up within our
Correct.
professional practice at some corner of our head. And we are happy that somehow in one way or the other we are contributing to the ecosystem. If not us, we are supporting somebody, someone, some entity which is prominent and is having the ambition to grow the ecosystem, support the ecosystem.
Exactly.
Got it.
So I see, as I said before, while I was infatuated with sports, I kind of lost touch with cricket maybe in the early 2010s. So I grew up watching every kind of test cricket match out there while I was a kid. I was a 90s kid, as you are probably. But yeah, but I've been a hardcore fan of football, especially European football. I still try not to miss a single EPL match over the weekend. Still play fantasy football quite religiously and competitively with a group of friends. But yeah, cricket is something that I randomly fell out of love with And then this is just a way to get back to watching cricket. And as you said, it's just there are so many unfinished conversations in the brain, and you keep watching the match. There is a conversation happening in your brain. Hey, why is this guy bowling, over the stump or around the stump? No? Why is the left-handed bowler bowling to a right-hander? But then, yeah, all you can do is just sit and be there and just watch and watch the coaching team do their job. But it's nice to get back all those feelings again while you're watching your team, and at a point when you're no longer reporting, you're no longer supporting the team, but you're technically part of it.
Part of it.
Yeah, so it's a great experience, and I'm loving it.
And I think over the years of practice, your perspective changes as well. As a sports lawyer, for example, if you freeze a frame from a random football match or any of the cricket match or anything, you freeze a frame and you look at it. And I think Ishwar would agree to us if we look into that particular picture. Now, our viewpoints have structured in a fashion that we would see at least 15 potential disputes and 16 different avenues to grow the business or to support the business, or 20 different legal dimensions where it could have been bettered or supported, and what the ongoing issues are. Starting from the freeze frame, even if you see in the boundary line or the scoreboard that some sponsor placement could have been better, how the contractual disputes might arise, what the players are wearing, how the audiences are behaving, what the camera angles are structured at, what IP rights might come up later on if this particular freeze frame come up, what the board might have in dispute to, what the management might have dispute to. There are so many aspects that we somehow are now accustomed to process that data within a flash of second. And I think that changes the whole perspective toward the sports. What we were as athletes, probably in our early days or while not being a successful athlete, now at least somewhere down the line we understand the game in a different perspective. If not athlete, we know that we now understand it in a fashion where we can make or break the entities and what goes on at the foundational level in a fashion that something that ought to have been taken care at the grassroots level, coming back to the main agenda for addressing the grassroots issues, then at a scalable margin, when things grow bigger or the athlete grows or a foundation grows or a club grows or an entity grows and more money, power, lobby, etc. is involved, and the complex legal webs get more and more complex along the path, then how important it is to identify those issues right at the grassroots level.
Yeah, interesting question. So, as you just said, see, when you are a lawyer working for a sports franchise, you suddenly start watching the game in a different light. Earlier, if you're watching a match, you're probably looking at maybe the bowler or the footballer.
Yeah, you're enjoying
or,
it as a viewer.
Yeah, you're just enjoying it as a viewer, right? You're probably at best you're probably looking at what what the formation is for a football match, or how direct or how fluid is the passing, who is running into space, who's not. But now when I'm at the stadium, as you said, and I'm looking at a sponsor branding in the back of my head, I'm thinking of all the clauses that I had negotiated a week ago with the sponsor, and I'm thinking about, hey, has this delivered?
Whether the checklist has been ticked off or not.
It just happens. It's not intentional, but it just keeps going on in my mind, right? And then for example, you're seeing a support staff or a physiotherapist on the field.
Correct.
Then, this is the person who we had a discussion with last week on his job. Well, looks like he's already started his job. And when you're at the stadium, you're thinking about how the negotiations happened with KSCA, whether, for example, safety protocols are actually in place. While it's not technically my job to ensure these are being done, that is the interesting part about, firstly, being a lawyer, because we get to have our hands everywhere across the entire portfolio.
I think I'll take this question a bit to Ishwar as well, since he has worked with the Go Sports.
Correct.
So Ishwar, a lot of time at the grassroots level, money is not poured into the foundation out of sheer philanthropic interest. See, philanthropy comes once you have the money. But in India, the scenario is such that you get the money from the CSR or the high net individuals if they see it at a scalable commercial scale at sooner or a later stage, or they have money parked somewhere which can be a smart taxation planning to pour in the money. And in one way or the other, unfortunately, fortunately, in India and many European countries as well, sports governance is still managed by people with influence and power. And sports governance is often seen as a ladder to climb up, to have that access further. So a lot of dirty work that goes, which of course we can't reveal about as well, but it changes your perspective toward the sports and athletes and management and governance as you develop your practice as a sports lawyer more and more. So you understand that what you initially thought the struggles of an athlete might be, it's way beyond that. Like you would be thinking that earlier they had to scale a mountain of 3000 meter. Suddenly you realize that it's 10 times the Everest height that they have to scale up. And then we have racial discrimination, gender discrimination, biases, and you have ethnical, and there is a trend to not have that acceptance as well. Like I'm pretty sure in all of our careers we would have come across clients which we would not have entertained as human beings given the option. But because we are bound by the service contracts and everything, we are entertaining them. So, how difficult it is to navigate those charts? What are the issues that you have fundamentally seen where you identify a problem that this particular athlete is being signed by, say, X athlete management company, and you know that the rights are going to be exploitative in the near future, irrespective of the athlete's career or not, and yet you are helpless and hapless and cannot identify without taking names. For example, I know one of your players. I mean, I would not go into the foundation name, an excellent boxing athlete, and I am someone who had been an ardent athlete and follower of boxing since my childhood days. And once he became a prominent boxer, suddenly you find the guy not being able to sign up for the pro championship leagues because his management rights are so stringent and draconic right at the inception level that it could not have been even inferred or apprehended at the grassroots level. So how do you revolve around this as a sports lawyer?
Yeah, I mean, Nashisa, I think it's an important challenge which especially emerging athletes or athletes who are more operate at the grassroots level face, because especially if you don't come from family of wealth, then inevitably sport, if you need to compete at the elite levels, also requires a certain amount of investment in your career, whether it's in the form of getting access to the best form of training, nutrition, physiotherapy, and all of that. There is an amount of investment that is required. And when you are operating at some of the grassroots level, you don't necessarily have a slew of sponsors lining up for you. So you're lucky if you have one or two sponsors who've come in. Correct. And at that point of time, you pick between getting funds from the sponsor, which is critical for you to proceed with your career, because you're not sure. Well, everybody is aspirational and want to be the Kohlis or of the country. Not everybody is able to reach those levels. So you necessarily are looking for an avenue to get funding. And at that point of time, you are dealt with situations where you have an agency who has brought a particular sponsor to you, or a sponsor in question putting in clauses like exclusivity, saying that you non-compete, you will necessarily have to be associated with me for X number of years. You could have a conglomerate who's like associating with you for a particular brand, but may put a non-association in respect of all businesses. So those are challenges you necessarily have to face. But I suppose that's an important trade-off, but it needs to be an informed trade-off, because you don't want a situation where an athlete is not aware, which in a lot of cases happens because they're desperate for funding and then they realize the challenges later. So it's critical to be informed. I suppose another issue on similar lines, but not directly relating to this, is the whole anti-doping framework. A lot of them are not aware. Then you get into situations where you've had some substance which you've unknowingly had, and then you get stuck.
And more often, we have systematic institutional doping mechanisms. Correct. In place as well.
Right.
So when we speak about grassroots issues, we have tons of foundations which are coming up to create that accessibility for the kids or athletes who otherwise do not have that infrastructure support or the ecosystem support. So one of the most important key issues, Shravan, correct me if I'm wrong, like you deal at a level at your law firm where the scalability has already reached. Right. Correct? Right. But if you see grassroots foundational issues, then you are also helpless at that particular point of time. Correct? So at that scenario, does it ever occur to you that foundational institutions who are assisting the kids or the athletes should also incorporate a curriculum where these issues are addressed as an awareness program or an educating program for the athletes and the foundations, that what might be a slippery slope honey trap for them later on? Because when you are hungry as an athlete, you can't afford shoes or infrastructure. Somebody comes forth and says that I will sponsor X amount, I will take care of a nutrition, coaching expenses, and everything. You are desperate at that point of time to sign up for whatever the things that you need, because you need the access to play. And just at the peak of your career, or when your career has started taking a shape, suddenly you feel that that particular contract or arrangement had been nothing but a leash with the devil that I signed up for. So, do you think that as a part of the legal framework educational program at this point, specifically with Go Sport Foundation or say the Army Institute of Sports or anything, that these legal aspects should be incorporated as one of the educational programs or an awareness workshop program, so that they are aware what's happening at the places where the scalability has already reached a point?
Yeah, no, I think for sure, without taking names, I mean, in all honesty, having worked with Go Sports for a while, I think there is an effort on their part. But more generically, examining, I think at least I would view it as an important part of an athlete's progression, in addition to also providing them with soft skills required for developing and exploiting their IP and their fame and all of that. I suppose legal awareness, you don't have to convert them into lawyers, but for them to be aware of what they're signing up for or what exactly is that they're doing, I think it's critical.
And more than often, what I've faced in our practice as well, that we get the cases at a stage where we ourselves are helpless and hapless, like we cannot help them. For example, they have been a part of a doping program which is at an institutional level. Suddenly, you are caught by WADA checks, and the institution is never going to admit it. And here you are, you cannot admit on record that it is a sabotage program by your fellow colleagues and coaches and everyone. And at the same, because if you utter that, then your career is over for a good measure. And at that point of time, they turn to lawyers, where it is less of a legal issue and more of a career issue and a business call or a commercial call or a life call that they have to take from their end.
Yeah, those are challenges. A lot of
Correct.
See,
I'm
one,
with you.
one question that I have here is, should it always be a matter of discretion and choice when it comes to these issues, or couldn't it be like a matter of design? For example, while I don't know the details, I know about the English player performance program in the UK, where while it's a plan, while it's once it's implemented, then you have academies which are purely divided into different levels, and then you have mandated standards to be met, and everything starting from player injury prevention to anti-doping education, or education on anti-gambling, legal
But where do you
support.
draw the line? My question is,
Yes.
for example, if a European tennis player, again without taking name,
Yes.
was caught, a very prominent tennis player was caught with doping traces in his bloodstream
Right.
from a random check
Mm.
in one of the premium most uh, Grand Slam event. Now, the excuse that the lawyers came up before the Court of Arbitration of Sports, that the physiotherapist had a cut, the physiotherapist applied an ointment on his skin, the physiotherapist gave a sports massage to the athlete, and from skin to skin, those traces came into his bloodstream. Which again, if you see into the forum institutional biases,
Right.
all right, the same set of arguments had been taken by any of the underdeveloped or developing or a poorer athlete, WADA would not approve of it.
Right. Yes.
But the moment the influential lawyers and an athlete of prominence with deep pockets raised the same arguments, WADA went into a behind the scene understanding and the case went into a hush hush NDA. So I'm pretty sure that biasness exists from the grassroots level to the apex level. And no matter at what level you are playing in as an athlete or as a foundation who's dealing with athletes and in the industry, you have to navigate and charter around those waters. There becomes the tricky part. But had the institutional curriculum been in place right from the outset, at least there would be a certain degree of vigilance that you need to do this or that. And this does not apply to doping mechanisms only, it applies to a lot of things. How players are selected in the governance mechanism, how the boards are constituted, who controls the sports, how do you get an entry into it from the grassroots level, what are the catches or the agreements with the devil that you have to do in order to, issues that you have to shut your eyes for, issues you have to be privy and be liable for. So all those things comes in an athlete's career sooner or later, no matter how successful or not successful you might be in your medal tallies or your trophies tallies or your accolades or your achievements. So governance, law, economic, and charting around those governance structures is always going to be an inherent part.
True. So I would say that this has been a challenge in kind of all the sectors, okay, like be it music or any other sector for that matter, where this anti non-compete clause or restrictions has been there in certain contracts. So the most important thing is to take advice at the right time, as you rightly put it out. In the recent past, while we were advising a client, they have progressed substantially in the discussion with the other side, and then they come to the lawyers, and everything becomes a business call at that time, right? So you would have given it up. To backtrack at that time means that it gives a indication to the market to say, well, look, this deal didn't happen for this guys, for whatever.
But something is wrong.
Something is wrong with them.
And nobody else would touch you after that.
Touch you
because
after
it
that,
becomes
right?
a red flag issue.
Correct. So I think where this is coming is, yes, the education needs to be imparted so that every sportsman who wants to do a contract should have a basic idea of what is okay with him, what is not okay with him, which otherwise he would not even look into. Even if he gives it to a lawyer may look at it from a legal point of view, but from a business point of view, there may be something in the sportsman's mind which may not even be communicated by him to the lawyers. And also, I think it's about, the, as he rightly pointed out, the funding aspect, right? Now, there are people who are privileged and who can go to lawyers, and then there are a few who cannot go to lawyers. So in that context, I think the government, I read somewhere in statistics that about $500 million they have budgeted for sports this year. So the way they have to impart, it's not just about training, it's about the comprehensive education that they give about that particular aspect. It's not just legal aspect, it's about mental health, it's about physical health, it's about the way you interact with others, right? So that kind of an education which needs to be given.
I'll pause you there.
Yes.
I'll just say this. Let's just call spade a spade. So all the philanthropy, all the investment from the VC firms, all the entities investing suddenly in the sports, as we see the changing scenario, there is a difference between what the industry was before India pitched for the Olympics and after India pitched for the Olympics, and there is clear indication that we will succeed in securing the 2036 Olympics. So the road to Olympics for every nation which has hosted it had been statistically economic disaster for the nation at large, but it had always resulted in premium investments and deep pockets for people who otherwise were mid-scale ventures, and suddenly they grow up. So more or less it's a infrastructure, finance and real estate game at the end of the day. I mean, let's be honest and say that very few people who are invested in the industry of the sports really do care about the athletes. They don't. And I'm not saying that profitability and commercial success cannot go hand in hand with athlete welfare. In fact, we have seen from examples from foundations who have really taken care of the athletes have grown along with it. Without exploitative rights or without having an ulterior motive as to how and what to structure around and what not. So where is the dilemma or the gap in the law that you see in this particular aspect from the grassroots to a scalable position?
Well, let me start with the grassroots level. Okay. Now, today what we have is a policy of 2025, which kind of, addresses, and you have the Supreme Court judgment of 23, which talks about the workplace, any facility for that matter, academy, whatever, that is a...
Speaking about the Sports Governance Act and the...
Correct. And the judgment of the court. So they say that it's a workplace, so you will have to treat it the way it is, right? Now, the fact is, at the ground level, does it really work is the question, okay? Let's take a simple example of, the case that happened. I think there are 2-3 cases which I cannot recollect right now, but there are allegations of sexual harassment, okay? Now, the POSH Act very clearly says that whatever facilities are there, they are workplace, and IC has to be constituted.
Correct.
Now, for constitution of IC, the mandate is that you have to have 10 employees.
Correct.
So there may not be 10 employees. Then what do we do in that situation? The idea should be that the children who are tomorrow's leaders, they come to the academy, they come to the facility, and they are happy there, and they learn more. Okay. So we have to bring in a policy where it's not just about having a metrics to say that if there are 10 employees, then have a IC, then all those commitments will come as regards investigation, that this etc. Let's have a manager, safety manager on each of the facility. I agree with you, in which case there will be some more investments that will go from all these companies, corporates who are operating these. They have to have a manager, a safety manager who addresses the situation at the ground level so that there are no untowardly incidents. Number one. Number two is that you go to many facilities here, okay, at a single time there will be at least 50 to 60 people who will be playing, and we will not have any medical facility or an infrastructure except for a first aid kit. Okay, I'm just talking about a grassroots level issue. We should have a medical professional, because these two are the key for anybody and everybody who comes and plays and who wants to make sports as their career. They want to feel safe. So the law should enable that as part of its curriculum, as part of the policy.
In fact,
and
the law
legislation.
does it. So, Ishwar, correct me if I'm wrong, because since you have worked at the policy and the governance level as well, including the drafting of the new act, I mean, you were a part of it.
The firm I was.
Yeah, for the firm you were a part of it. So the governance structure, as the judgment you cited, is always a bottoms-up approach. All right, the same. So all the national sports federations in India is just a matter of recognition with the Ministry of Sports Youth Affairs. They draw their legitimacy from the international federations of which they are member, who are a part of the International Olympic IOC over there. Now, IOC charter itself in international law recognizes law of the land of being paramount importance. Now, you are conditioned to be legitimized. For a national sports federation to be a legitimate eligible affiliate unit of an international federation, you have to follow the bylaws and the rules and regulations of that international federation, which are in line with the International Olympics charters. Right. Now, International Olympic Charter places athlete welfare of paramount importance. So all the committees we are speaking about, including sexual harassment, athlete welfare and management, all these committees are mandated at the international level, which have stemmed and seeped into the domestic legislation, and you are bound to follow that, because if your law is not in accordance with those rules, you lose your affiliation status, then you lose your legitimacy. But we are not concerned with the federation only. We're speaking about something as basic, say a football club which is operating in one of the areas of Bengaluru. Now, their idea might not be to scale themselves up, but the idea is to provide access to the athletes and to have a community and an ecosystem where access is guaranteed. But often in this endeavor, what they fail to identify and recognize is that the legal framework should be structured to mitigate the problems that they might face later on, even if they don't want to scale up. So I'll like to hear all you three on the same issue which you might have faced as lawyers in your careers or in different cases or matters, or your perspective about the same. So we'll start with Ishwar.
Yeah, sure. So I understand. It's I think an important question and an important consideration for organizations who work and of the size and scale that you mentioned. I suppose those organizations too, at an initial level, are looking, like with everybody else, they also may be dependent on certain number of athletes for the organization to run, some amount of funding. So inevitably, or invariably, from what I've seen, the legal considerations are not at the top of their priority. They probably should be, but they're not always at that, at where they are. And that sort of leaves a space where they're not looking at it until an issue crops up, by which time it's too late, you've lost the trust, you've set the sport back.
People at large
trying to avoid lawyers until they do.
Correct. Yeah, it's not like, and all of us are lawyers here, so it's not always viewed upon as.
No, I'm not promoting a practice over here. I'm just saying
I'm saying that
when we get the case, we see that this could have been done, would have been done, had it been done.
Yeah. And sometimes lawyers are also seen as people who take money away and
Which high one conflict upon I mean, the vultures of people.
yeah, exactly. That's the word I suppose people view as a lot of people view as that. So as a consequence, you don't necessarily see lawyer involvement at that level. But I think it's critical. I remember a panelist from the previous panel also mentioned about how there's now a need for us to have an important safeguarding and safety first of
Like
all.
I said, seriously, Nobelathon as well.
Right.
So had Swati not been a lawyer from a legal background, the way she would have been spun off and few of the things, it beyond my comprehension and her comprehension as well. And despite being lawyers also, we have been taken for a ride in few instances.
Yeah.
So I'm just imagining what it would be for the general public at large who do not have a legal background.
Yeah, I think that on that there needs to be some effort from the stakeholders, primarily from say government bodies, to maybe take some small measure like putting out a handbook in a language which is accessible in different languages. Not English is not necessarily the most important, the easiest language for it needs to be in the relevant regional languages. So something of that nature, while may not be able to solve everything, could be like a starting step to sort of address the information gap and the knowledge gap. Is something that at least I think would help.
Where's your strong tone? Yes. As you know, I've never worked at the grassroots levels at all before. But I have worked with certain artists in the music industry. I mean, not in the scope of my work, but outside of it. I would draw parallels to something that's happening in the music industry in Kerala. Right? I know a few indie artists who are doing pretty well, who have their own fan base, but they're not. I wouldn't call them mainstream artists. So these are people when they enter into a contract who are not exactly aware of what to negotiate, how to negotiate, or whether to have a contract in the first place. And what I know is what one particular musician did is once he became aware of the problem, he managed to get through a lawyer, managed to get a decent contract drafted, negotiated it with the party, and then he made sure that pretty much everybody, all the other artists in his network signs the same contract. All they had to do is go to a label who is coming to them or an event management company who's saying, hey, this is the template, and if you want this to be signed by me, let me offer you the template. I have a
Legal
template.
awareness should be a curriculum right at the foundational level.
It should be. See, the thing is, if we have to provide legal help to everybody at the grassroots level, the practicality of it is
No,
one
I'm
thing,
not
but the
even
desire.
referring to legal help. I'm just seeking that should be a curriculum that has legal awareness structured in an educational way.
Absolutely.
So that
just
they
doesn't
know
have
the
to do with
examples how
sports.
people have been exploited, the issues that can come up,
Correct.
how their intricacies are going to evolve along the lines of the career, and what the foundation committee members or the foundation founders, trustees, and others need to be aware of as well. That how
Exactly.
their athletes can be and would be exploited, how the organization can be incapacitated in a few instances.
Without a doubt. Yeah,
Correct.
but when it comes to the mechanism, see, what I was coming to get to is, for example, if you're talking about a contract, it's just for a particular field of sports, even in grassroots level, if there is an authority who can mandate a particular contract template for everybody, this is
Correct.
regardless of who you are, this is the only contract that will be entered into by the academy and whichever athlete. This has been vetted multiple times, and there are no changes
And on a
allowed.
case-to-case basis.
Not on a on case-to-case basis. So that is how you, I guess, in practice solve a problem. And yeah,
I agree. So before we conclude with Shravan, the entire conversation, we have one dying question that I need to ask you as an RCB lawyer.
okay.
Now, there are avenues which you would not have thought in your dream that you would deal with an issue like this.
Yes.
All right. So, for example, the stampede case. Never in your career you would have thought that you would be negotiating and sitting with criminal lawyers and police and government authorities coming and bombarding to what your role negotiations can be and into that entire process. So, as I started the conversation off, that there are avenues we don't even know that tomorrow we are going to wake up and have to deal with. Correct. So how did you place yourself in that particular position? And just keep it brief, and I would need few words of your reaction to the entire evolving practice and scenarios which you cannot comprehend yourself.
See, in general, I think a lot of the work that I've done over the past 1 year, okay, that's not a long period of time at all. The things that have coincidentally happened in the last 1 year and 4 months, exactly after I joined, there was during the season, there was a war that broke out.
You realize there is a lot
Matches
of
got delayed.
sentiment. You're sitting in Bengaluru and speaking about it.
Yes, I do. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, then there was a trophy win, followed with the stampede. And
Yeah, but then suddenly player contracts are in place as well, right? Even though criminal negligence cannot be waived off through a civil contract,
Correct.
but then you have to look into which player said what in social media, what happened, are they responsible? As RCB involved, is your franchise involved with those players' statements or calling for the public and all? And suddenly it's a criminal law jurisprudence for all the players and everything, which otherwise would not traditionally fall into sports law practice.
traditionally, it wouldn't. I mean, but if you're looking at the history of
No, I'm not asking about the facts. We just need to hear a few words of response from our RCB lawyer about the issue.
You know, I can't. This is a matter that is still going on in court.
I tried my best.
Yes, you did.
For the viewers.
Yes. Thank you so much. And all I can say is this is a matter that is sub judice, and I cannot be passing comments on this.
You can neither deny nor confirm the facts.
And I would just say sub judice. That's my response.
Shravan, over to you. So legal awareness at foundational level, even with real estate infrastructure development and the capital flow at the level that you deal with, how important do you deem that foundational awareness could have mitigated the issues you are facing right now?
Well, it's very important. Okay. See, the fact is that the sports law jurisprudence is evolving and more than ever. Okay. Sports law, once sports was earlier a co-curricular activity. Now it's become a mainstream activity, and everybody is doing it as a profession, right? So I think it's very important that the investors who invest for the purpose of the development of infrastructure keep that in mind. And whilst the CSR is there as part of development, there should be some percentage or some amount which should get directed to a specific activity. I mean, I'm just proposing, it's just a thought that's coming to my mind, so that otherwise the corporates would not have invested towards this.
But I think corporates have invested traditionally as well, right? We have Pablo Escobar putting in the drug money into football clubs.
No,
We have similar situation
not
in India as well.
As much as it has to be done, the way it is done in Europe or the way it is done in US or UK, India has to grow in sports, which means that the funds are required. So we'll have to have a legislative backing to that, so that we develop infrastructure, we develop the ability for the children to want to pursue it as a career in life. That's my thought.
Thank you all. We'll end the conversation here. Thank you, Ishwar. Thank you, Shravan. Thank you so much, Tony. Lovely speaking to you all.
Same. Thank you.